All right, I'm
Oh,
back. This is Sonny Speaks, and this podcast is called "The George Floyd Murder and the Aftermath." And we've had about 6 or 7 guests on here, and people have told me how much they enjoyed it. They followed along, but it's not over. Just like the aftermath, it's not over, and in some ways, the aftermath may just be beginning. But today, I got a distinguished guest on the line with me. Um, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself.
hi, Sunny.
Hey,
Um,
hey.
and hello, everybody. My name is Stacey Gibson, and daughter of Pansy and Harold, and mother of Salome. And I am here to talk with Sunny about this and whatever else comes up. Um, the things that folks usually think about in this moment. Well, who are you? What do you do? I'm an educator and a parent and somebody who's looking closely at what's going on in our world.
Good. That's what's up. I like the way you introduce yourself as a daughter and as a mother, because I think this conversation that we're having and that me and you are about to embark upon, it speaks to those two responsibilities very, very, very clearly. You know, as a mother of a young African American woman
Mm-hmm.
who a lot of times these conversations about police brutality um, it can kind of leave women out. And so you have a young daughter, you're a woman yourself, you mentioned your mother and your father.
Mm-hmm.
So even as a child, I'm sure your parents are also in the same kind of space.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so glad that you introduced yourself as a child and a mother, because
Yeah.
I don't even have any kids, but I work with kids. I love kids. I have nephews and nieces who I adore, and I'm not a mother, of course, and never will be. But I could not watch the George Floyd assassination on tape. Um, it when people told me the
Mm-hmm.
situation, it broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear a grown man, yell out for his mother,
Mm-hmm.
who has passed, it it
Mm-hmm.
it traumatized me, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy, and to see a person plead for their life in this space, um, again, you know, was haunting. And so, of course, if I had children, which I don't, but I think I see kids as some of my children, but I do know that there is a difference. I can just imagine how much more troubled I would be. I would really be troubled if I had a son or a daughter trying to navigate these spaces on their own. And when I mean on their own, I mean that we're trying to push back against the police, but when you out there with them,
Mm-hmm.
you basically on your own. You can be good, you can say the right things, but God bless us. So speak to that a little bit, especially since you have a daughter and there are women who,
Wait, I'm sorry, Sonny. Can we pause for a second?
yeah,
There are about 17 things you just said that I could engage in and talk about and ask you about. That
okay,
was
we can do that.
so powerful and curious. So, what's the plan?
We
Can
can,
we talk about that?
let's do that. Somebody said to me, when are you going to share your perspective? And I thought I was. So let's do it. Let's do it.
um, even just starting with what you just said, and you're right, there's some of us who kind of, physically and biologically have not gone through this birthing process. Um, but part of communal identity is that in many ways we are, mothering and fathering each other and each other's children. And, I've watched that in the aftermath, present, future, past. Uh, Time is collapsing. around these incidents. And so, there's a way that you might not have biological children, but I've watched you, Sonny, parent a whole lot. And there is both a need and a deep appreciation for the folks who don't have biological children who are stepping in because it's necessary. We will have to move and lift and parent and guide in a way that we actually have done before.
Yes.
I'm not someone so much who thinks like we've never been here before. I suspect we might have some very powerful tools from something similar. So that's one of the things I wanted to speak to, and I'll speak to just one more. When you said, and I, like you, did not watch the footage, but heard about it. And when you said, he called out to his mother, it makes me think, he knows he's probably going to her. Is he calling her to say, here I come? Are you waiting for me? And how prevalent are, thoughts like that on a regular basis? And then, the larger mother, the mother, the great mother spirit, this great earth. There's layers and layers of mothering, probably in that call that he made. It's his moment, so I'm not going to story it, but, what is mother in this moment?
Yeah.
What is mothering all of us right now? Those are some of the things that I was left, not just thinking about, but trying to feel my way into some of these learnings instead of kind of using my brain to think and muscle into some kind of thinking.
Yeah. So this has, as you know, popped off a lot of stuff. Protests again, some activism again. We also saw some vandalism and looting, which we can't get in that, but we don't have to. But it still was a part of the reaction of what took place, and the culmination of things that have constantly taken place in the African American community as it relates to policing. What were you doing at those moments? Where were you at? Were you home? Were you in a safe space?
My body was at home, and I live, right outside of Chicago, in the suburbs in Evanston. And, my body was there. My spirit self was transient, moving in and out of different kinds of prayer, and working on staying grounded, actually. Those kinds of moments, it's real easy for like the physical body and the mental body. The mind starts going one way, the physical body is doing something else, the spirit body is going somewhere else. So for me, I was trying to pay attention to, what my family needed, what I needed. Did I feel like I was in a kind of direct or periphery kind of danger? I did. There were things that actually happened out in Evanston as well, not to the degree that it did in the city. So that's where I was physically. Emotionally, working through the sadness, working through the anger, and at the same time holding the vision that there is something very fertile and very important about this moment, and tapping into that. So I was in a lot of places, Sonny. When people ask me, how are you doing? I've been saying I'm fantastic and turbulent.
Mm. All
And
at
I
the same
remember I
time.
said that to you.
Yes, you did.
And you said,
Hmm.
more information, please.
Yes. I was like, what does that mean? I put a quizzical screen. Like,
Yeah.
but I would
Yeah.
expect nothing else than a comment like that from you. So I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Here
All of it.
Stacey. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Where were you, Sonny? Where were you when that was happening?
um Saturday, because the initial protest started Saturday, and I was way out in the west suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back to the city, Lakeshore Drive was closed off. I got off
Mm-hmm.
on 55 and was like headed south on Lakeshore Drive. And I was like, first, I think it's like a 35th Street exit was closed. Then it was like the next, I'm like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go all the way down to like 63rd or 67th or something to get off on Lakeshore Drive. So clearly something was going on downtown. They didn't want people to, I don't know what they were doing. But by the time I got home, I heard about some of the commotion and some of the protests going on downtown. So, of course, to consume the news, I was at home looking at it on the news. I am very excited about protest.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a time and a space for it, and I think that was definitely the time, and that was definitely the space for it. If um, yeah, and then Sunday, I didn't know that it was going to overlap. I knew that there was looting downtown. I knew people had broken to buildings. Again, this was all over the news. So Sunday I had planned to, like you said, being in two places at one time, I did plan to do business as usual. And I had to go to the store to pick up some stuff for
Mm-hmm.
a program. So la-di-da, I'm headed to the store. This store is closed. Go to another store. This store closed. I'm like, what's going on? Why are all these stores closed?
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of me was like, hey, dude, you remember what just happened yesterday, and so I'm headed south on Cottage Grove and headed to a friend's house for dinner, and well, it was around lunch. But anyways, and I just rolled up on some looting. I'm talking about people just middle of the day, just jumping out their car, busting a window, jumping in
Mm-hmm.
the store. I'm like, oh my good, it was bananas. I never seen anything like that, and it wasn't a scary feeling, but it was just weird to see that many people just taking other people's stuff, you know, right there on 75th and Stony, where that Jewel is at and that Big and Tall, and there's a couple other stores. I think there's a Walgreens in that same complex. And I got some food and I headed to my colleague's house for lunch. And we just were talking, we were watching the news, and of course, again, it was consumed by the news. And she was like, well, are you gonna be careful getting home? And of course I was. And it just took me a while to kind of just absorb all of what was going on, because there was so much going on with the looting and the protests. And of course, protests are still going on. Thank God that the looting and the vandalism has stopped. But even on my way home, there was still, by the time I got to the side of town that I live on, stores were boarded up. Some of them still are. People were still stealing and looting and taking stuff. And I was like, wow, this is interesting.
Mm.
Mm. So,
Hey, Sonny, can I lean in with you on something you just said?
mm-hmm,
If you could shift out the word interesting,
mm-hmm.
what would you shift to?
It was because one of the things that's a generic word I use. I don't really know what word to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm with you.
in some ways, it was um, it was bizarre, but I get it. You know what I'm saying? When my friend asked me, "Are you gonna be safe going home?" I told her when I rolled up on some people that was looting, it didn't seem dangerous. The climate didn't seem like, oh, it's gonna turn into
Mm-hmm.
attacking people. That was just how I felt. People were
Mm-hmm.
out there taking merchandise. Um, and I thought to myself, some people are at a breaking point, and this is the point. I do not. I will
Mm-hmm.
say that I would never condone that, but I don't know what I would do if I watched my loved one goes through something like that, or if I've had several encounters with the police that are similar to that to no avail, right? And it's like striking back. And so people have been very um, upset about taking stuff out of our community and um, stores and things of that nature. You know, I don't. I don't want to go 3 miles to drive to go to the grocery store either, and I don't want to see or not be able to get medication. But these type of changes not going to happen by us just. And I'm not saying this is the way it's going to happen, but I'm just saying this. That I understand people's anger. And I understand people's frustration. I understand people fed up. Now, of course, there's people out there just opportunities. They just saw an opportunity to break some stuff and steal. That's just. I think that's part of the course. There's nothing we can do about that. But in some ways, I was a bit um, like, okay, if I could say that, okay, yeah, yeah,
Sonny,
get it.
people are going to be surprised hearing you
Yeah,
say
they
that.
may be. They may be. Some people may. Yeah, you know,
Okay.
you know. And then in another way, it was like, I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but I don't know the best way. I know that many people would love for this to go away, for this to be out of the news every day. Can't go out of the news every day when the city is on fire, you know. And I think this allow people to try to comprehend people's rage. So I was all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which to me, being, you just said all over the place, in some ways to me is like a healthy response. It's important to have so much of what we're dealing with is, such deep distortion and such deep kind of tyranny. And such like deep, like psychic and psychological ruptures. I can understand why someone might feel like they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Your words right there. I keep trying to limit my ideas and thoughts and downloads to just two. But even just now, when you were talking about, your response to the looting, and I've heard many interpretations and analysis around it. But there's a thing you said where you said, I don't necessarily know what I would do. And I think about sometimes I've seen people get stuck in the kind of polarization, like I agree, I don't agree. And they kind of get stuck with, one or the other. And I often think about what it might mean to have some understanding without being obligated to agree or disagree.
Right. That's great.
Which is this real kind of like, I want to say grace, but there's another word that's not coming yet. Like how do we understand without necessarily having to agree?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I was thinking about is, with when I looked at the looting, I thought of it more as, you just said breaking point. When you say breaking point, I think about, energy, because so much of this is about energy. And I think about what would happen if there's a collective practice around harnessing the energy that comes up. There's energy that makes itself very present when we see this kind of like public murder, this kind of public assassination, and these kind of public acts of, I actually call them acts of lovelessness, and I think about the energy that came up with the looting, and I think about how powerful it would be if there was a way to collectively harness that energy so that we are, responding to our needs.
Yeah.
and responding to our like salvation and our own like mobilization, and responding to our uplift, rather than reacting to like spiritual decay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, respond to our need instead of reacting to somebody else's like spiritual crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Because a
Yeah.
lot of this like violence that comes down, especially with this like, you know, police, state-backed police, government-backed police, you know, we're looking at individual decay of the kind of like spirit soul self
Mm-hmm.
being acted out.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that there's a history of that. So if we know there's a history of that, what does it mean for us to, and I'm not even really sure who the us and we is anymore sometimes, but,
Right.
you know, what does it mean to have a response that's steeped in energy, where instead of, say, something like looting, all that energy gets activated for something much more beneficial,
Yes.
where we can gain. So those are some of the things that I've been allowing to come through.
That is a beautiful point, you know, and in some ways I've seen small remnants of it through groups of people I've talked to and
Mm-hmm.
through, of course, Facebook and social media. Some people I know, some people I don't. We actually had a conversation with our teams in the youth program that I work in, and just kind of had them kind of share their thoughts, just kind of vent. And I took so much away from that because I want our teens to be able to be a part, or our young people to be a part of this pushback in a way, but in a way that they can feel comfortable, you know. And like I've said before, we've always, and you just said it too, historically, this is not new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Police in our community is not new. And you
Mm-hmm.
talked about tools. You talked about the tools in which,
Mm-hmm.
if we look back, if we was to
Mm-hmm.
use that energy that you talked about and galvanize that in a way to say, okay, let's take a step back. Let's Sankofa and say to ourselves, how did our ancestors deal with this? You know, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily successfully that it's over, but that they did not destroy themselves or go insane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this kind of repetition, I think I've had to go through this constantly, which I've had to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
It would drive me crazy, you know? And I think that's some of the outpour of emotion and energy that we saw, you know, just people just buck wild. But hopefully we can begin to use this time to galvanize young people and older people too, to, hey, let's do a writing campaign, right? And hopefully, you know, from that could come a Sonia Sanchez in our group. You know, well, let's have a competition or a debate. From that could come a Martin Luther King. Let's use arts. Let's use our music. Hopefully, there's a Fela in our group and a Stevie Wonder in our group. I mean, we've always used ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our gifts to push back at this the system. You know, whether it be through music, through art, through dance, through gardening, right? Through
Mm-hmm.
cooking, through having our own, through entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I want young people to be able to take this in, but then use it in a way that is productive individually and collectively. And that will be the energy that I would like to see to come out of
Mm-hmm.
this. So that when this kind of stuff go on, people don't feel like if I'm not downtown protesting, which they more than like they're willing they should be able to do, or if I'm not tearing something up or in the looting, then I'm not. What do I do? What
Mm-hmm.
place do I belong? Where is my space in this? You
Mm-hmm.
know, we need intellects to have conversation. We need people to have a conversation around this anyways, because different ideas and different perspectives are needed and needed to be heard. You know, people
Mm-hmm.
need to voice what is going on. And
Mm-hmm.
this channel has helped me to cope and to say, look, maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel in a way where not necessarily we can change the police. I hope we can do that through reform and through policy, but we can figure out tools in which we can survive this. At the end of the day, I think we need reform and policy. But if that don't happen tomorrow and this happens again, then what do we do so we won't go mad, you know? So, you know.
Sonny, can we take a deep breath? We, me and you together?
Yes,
All right. Ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you, dear. That right there, the breathing, take a moment even. And
Mm-hmm.
that just came to me. I was listening to you talk, and I've been watching your face on this camera because I haven't seen you in since February.
Right, we've been obeying the rules.
I know. And I could see, I could see like your forehead like coming together, and I could see you, like I could see the things are,
Mm-hmm.
on your face. I'm not going to name it, but we're all walking with these things. And one of the most important lessons that I received was, nobody's getting away with anything.
Yeah.
Um, the people who are on the side, of upholding this tyranny, they're
Mm-hmm.
not getting away with anything. It looks like it. Um, and, so there's a way that there's a script that's happening, that's real, but our ability to shift out of that is also very, very powerful. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you say, we need the people to talk about it, interestingly enough, we have always had the messages. We've always had great, great, great messengers,
Yeah.
both, the ones we held up publicly
Mm-hmm.
and, our auntie in the backyard,
Yes.
our just regular, everyday folk who had lots and lots of powerful instructions for us. Um, so there's a way of, when I hear people say, we need somebody to step up and speak up. We are that. All of us are that.
I know. I
We
know.
are our best thing. And then something that you had said, when you said you saw, you were looking at people who were going buck wild. Um, and I'm not sure why it struck me, because I know that's like a colloquialism, like I've used it about being buck wild, and I just keep thinking about what it means to be activated,
Mm-hmm.
and how when we get activated, it's real easy for it to be considered one thing or another.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, there's huge activation. There are a lot of people who are activated, um, and 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 doing what I think is necessary, which is to create, using our code for happiness. We're coded and wired for happiness, bliss, and the creative energy to ensure the success of a species. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what we come in order to do. That's
Mm-hmm.
like, divine order. Using that to make sure the species moves forward. And for me, I keep thinking about activating around that as much as possible. All the while, it's happening in a time where it's real easy to be paralyzed.
Yes, it is.
I can see the people who are paralyzed with fear. I get that. I'm experiencing and working through that regularly. I see the folks who are, they have analysis paralysis. They've just analyzed stuff so long that they're just kind of stuck. I've been there too. And all of those things I work through on a daily basis. So that divine species sustaining creativity, which is so fertile, which is so powerful. I'm all for amplifying that, and asking people what they're doing to amplify that.
Yeah.
Policy is one place. We also know Policy can be very, very long and slow.
Yes.
And the other part is we can't legislate morality.
No.
We can't legislate, cleaning up of the spirit and the soul. We can't legislate like that inner discipline to like dislodge from some of this like terror. So you're right. Let's get clear around what we need to do. If this pops off again, which it probably will, what are we going to do so that we don't cause harm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Well, what would be one of you talked about activating, right? What would be one of the activations that you would, if we could galvanize around a particular activation point that you would be involved in, what would that look like?
Thanks, Sonny. I can tell you one of the ones that I've been personally doing is getting my hands like literally in soil, planting more, being more committed to not just like having a garden with lots of cilantro, but going into the science around some of food sovereignty. I think about how, we don't have a system in the United States that hasn't been enslaved. And I look at our medical system, when I look at our schooling system, when I look at our food system, that same kind of like bizarre way of controlling and domination, excuse me, is on all of these systems. So the food is the thing that will help us build our immunity. We can't forget that this COVID thing is real. And so, excuse me, how do we build our immunity? Because that's the thing that'll allow us to stay clear-headed. It's the thing that, for me, allows me to stay calm. It allows me to be very keen and discerning. So that's one of the things. I've watched other people. We both know Tony with Sacred Keepers. We saw what happened right there, which was, hey, activate, help each other. And we watched that happen in Bronzeville.
Yep.
Another form of activation is, for me, I have a daughter, and talking to her in a way that gives her like multiple forms of context. So letting her have access to some of these histories, letting her know some of the things that I have struggled with, or places where I feel very, where I'm feeling hard on myself and what I'm doing to release that kind of script, talking about mental wellness, talking about spiritual stamina, developing partnerships with people, literal practice partners. We talk about, partnering with people to learn some of these powerful lessons. So yeah, those are some of mine. What about you, Sonny, in terms of activation? You said this channel has helped, yes?
This channel has helped me cope. I mean, part of the, excuse me, part of the reason why I think this manifested itself in a way that it did this particular time was that it happened. So it had happened, right on the heels of Aubrey. This is his first name. He lets his name up, but you know what I'm talking about, the
I
jogger.
do. Mm-hmm.
Then the Breonna Taylor situation, but also this COVID situation, which had us kind of housebound for a period of time and kind of stuck in the house. So all of this created like this, as people keep saying, the perfect storm. And so I was doing a little bit more cooking already and doing a little bit more healthy eating. And then that tied into gardening. I'm not gardening, but I had a conversation very similar to what you just said. And three of my friends and one of them being my mother, had just started a garden. And I actually believe it's one of her activation points, if you will, coping mechanism. They're actually putting her hands in soil and helping to create something.
Mhm. Mhm.
Me, content through my Sunny Speaks, I had done smaller podcast. It was not smaller, but podcast very similar to this with children during the
Mhm.
outbreak, and then when they were quarantined at home, and for the most part they still are, and then this came about, and I was like, well, I want to hear what people are saying. You know, I'm also constantly asking a lot of questions of people. You
Mhm.
know, and just like kind of hear their perspective and pondering about that. I journal a bit and I
Mhm.
read a bit. So those things have been my coping activation points.
Mhm.
And thank God for people like you who,
Mhm.
can, and others who have just, I mean, their perspective is so valuable, even in
Mhm.
some of these conversations, which of course weren't recorded. I mean, of course, I don't agree with it. I'm like, whoa, so it's just interesting to hear different perspectives. But
Mhm.
again, and then my challenge to that is I gotta find a way. I have access to young people who trust me, parents who trust me. So I
Mhm.
think that's a blessing.
Mhm.
Um, my my challenge, and that's always good to me, is to create something so young people can be engaged.
Mhm.
So they don't have to just let this energy sit up in them. This. Oh, could I be next? Oh, this is horrible. Let's
Mhm.
release that. Let's release that in poetry. Let's release that in a hip hop song. Let's
Mhm.
release that in a drawing. Let's release that in music or speech, so that we don't have to bear that burden alone. Other people can learn from it, and maybe we can, maybe we can fine tune a craft and look up. We got a Pulitzer Prize winner or James Baldwin amongst us, or Maya Angelou, or
Mhm.
Shirley Chisholm. So those are the things that have kind of kept me going, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then my spirituality. I have to pray to God and say, Lord, have mercy. What is going on?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
why us kind of thing. What God, what is really, what's up? You know what I'm saying? Why we always the ones getting bullied or picked on, seem like. And then we're supposed to, you
Yeah,
know,
Sonny.
not supposed
Yeah.
to do nothing. That's why the whole thing about tearing up these structures don't necessarily bother me. You know what I'm saying? Now again, I wouldn't want nobody to have to go extra mile to get their grandmama's, cataract medicine, but I don't know if that's a way you're gonna be able to get this amount of change without some violence, right?
Mhm.
And whether that be physical violence or the destruction of the beginning destruction of infrastructures that represent that, these banks and these communities. The bank by me, all the ATMs, people stole the ATMs. I don't even know how they got them, But on the flip side, that bank that I bank at it because I don't really have I mean, I do have a choice, but the interest is so low. That's not saving. That's not giving me no money. They taking that right back with charges. And we know about redlining. We know that these banks barely loan money to people in our community to build wealth through houses. That's historically proven. So when we talk about tearing up our community, I'm not sure if that's what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? I think some of these stores that were targeted or hit, um, people resent anyway. They resent them being in their community anyway. I work at a youth center. None of our youth centers were hit, and I'm talking about we got all kind of. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this on air. We got all kind of stuff up in there, but nobody evaluated them and messed with them. And I think that's because of what they represent to the community, right? And just because you're there collecting money from people because you have a big chain store, it don't mean you're a part of that community, or that neighborhood.
Mhm.
Yeah, we just got to put up with you because we, to some degree, don't have no choice or have limited choices. So,
And Sonny, that's the thing that I've been really sitting with is what happens if I decide I have abundant choices? Or, so yes, in kind of like the practical sense, it looks like I don't have a lot of choices.
Mm-hmm.
But if I am able to reconfigure
Mm-hmm.
how I am thinking about resources, if I'm able to be guided by folks who are have whole different structures around resources, it could very well be that I realize that I have way more resources than the script has trained me to believe that I have. And so, I do go back because when I think about the violence, I think about the kind of energetic vibration. And I've been really paying attention to energy more because it helped me to really start to manage my, what people will call anxiety, but I actually call it, it was my kind of internal alarm system.
Mm.
And the training, the script is, your internal alarm system is a problem. So it is anxiety. And in fact, no, that was just my spirit letting me know like something's up. And so energetically, like the vibration of the violence, though I can, again, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I have some level of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very profound collective vibration that I actually think doesn't serve us. That vibration around like the violence and the
Mm-hmm.
and again, I can have some understanding. So, again, for me, how do we reconfigure what we believe resources are?
Yes.
How do we teach that to youth? How do we go into these places where abundance is something that we are not just teaching, but we are living it, um, and in deep partnership with ourselves and each other. I know I have places I need to step into that
Right.
I know I got stuff to do, and it's really forcing me to shift how I'm thinking about what resources are. Again, like I said at the start of this, we have everything we need. We have a lot of tools and answers,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we have some practices. They're going to require some deep discipline. So one of my activations has been around a deeper kind of discipline and trying to tap into like frequencies that can support discipline. It sounds a little sciencey for some people, but
Mm-hmm.
when I'm thinking about discipline, when I'm moving with the creative kind of arc, that resonates in the body, that messages up my body. And I know that because that's how I was able to manage the anxiety.
Okay.
It's to like shift,
Okay.
all the anxiety is it's an alarm clock. All right, I have the power to, I know what's out there in terms of some of these structures and systems.
Right.
If I put a lot of my focus on that, I'm going to keep my alarm clock, screaming at me. So let me see it, but not be it. Let me see
Mm.
it, but not eat it.
Mm.
Let me be clear that, we are not in the same boat. You know how people are like, we're in this together. No, we're not. We're not in the same boat. We're not in the same storm.
Mm.
Um, there are definitely things that I feel I have to work on that actually has nothing to do with that kind of systemic infrastructure. And so stepping into that for me has been an invitation into a beautiful, complicated relationship with myself and how I am organizing, thought and feeling. So those are some of the shifts that I'm real interested in seeing that get activated. And I know a lot of folks on the ground who are doing that kind of work as
Mm.
well.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thanks, Sonny.
So this is, I told people at the beginning, I think I used the word interview, but I said I think this is more of a discussion. And I
Yeah.
think this is really more of a discussion. I'm glad it don't. it don't seem like an interview to either one of us. I'm glad my perspective
Right.
can make people clear on my point to some degree. I'm not clear on it all the time myself. So
Right. Right. And it's
yeah,
shifting, right?
yeah,
The
yeah.
moment, like all of this is inviting us to like shift in real profound ways. You know, some of where we were 6 months ago, really, it wasn't serving us then. You know, COVID happens, and all of a sudden, some people are longing for the thing that was most painful to them.
Mm.
Um, you know,
Yes.
so how to normalize like a healthy shifting practice.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I'm convinced we're going to need each other in really beautiful, tender, caring, disciplined ways. And that's beautiful. You
It
know, like
is.
discipline is beautiful. That's how we've been able to do so much of what we needed to do.
Yes, yes. I've also, at the beginning of COVID, of course, no one could have foreseen that it would go this. I didn't see it was going to go this long. I'm thinking
Mm,
a couple months we'll be back to business as usual. Here we are, it's June, right? Going into July.
mm-hmm,
Um, and now with the George Floyd murder and aftermath, it took a toll on our city in a different way, which kind of expounded this stay at home, this kind of retail commerce kind of thing going on. But I've always went into this hoping that at the end of the day, when this is all over, I'm a different person. I'm better. I can realign during this time. I'm not as busy. I'm at home. I can think more, concentrate more, read more, meditate more, exercise
mm-hmm,
more, think more, and for the most part, that has been the case. I know some
mm-hmm,
people who are coming out this or have the potential to come out of this more financially secure because of the way the stimulus package hit online on top of their taxes. And then they were unemployed, so they got that extra unemployment money. So it's like if you can see this as not as a blessing per se, but this is an opportunity to really start to shift and realign some things
mm-hmm,
with downtime. Nobody from my job got laid off. We all were
mm-hmm,
working from home, and in some situations that was it was a lot of work to do, but in many situations it was very little work to do because it's just certain things cannot be translated online. You just can't do some jobs
mm-hmm,
online. But so people had a lot of a lot of downtime, and of course it's up to them to determine how they want to use their downtime. And I wanted to use
mm-hmm,
mine to kind of align and for the most realign and refocus. And for the most part, I have begun that practice. So
mm-hmm.
yeah, I think we kind of similar, different, a little bit different, but similar in ways in which we have used this to benefit us.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sonny. Yeah, there's Alice Walker talks about honoring the difficult, and these contradictions. There's so many contradictions, and I'm convinced that it's actually at the point of the contradiction that is the most like fertile. There's so much at the very point of contrast and at the point of contradiction, and so I I hear you in terms of folks who might have been able to make some financial moves. Um, and I know so many people. I know a lot of folks who are either independently employed, um, who I actually in a lot of ways look up to those folks because they kind of
Mm.
stepped out of different systems and decided to make it happen on their own, either by choice or by consequence. And I watched the whole kind of quagmire of trying to navigate unemployment for that group. Um, I've seen a lot of people become, economically destabilized. I've watched elders be like forced into retirement.
Mm.
I actually made an appointment recently, a doctor's appointment, and all of the people I'd worked with have been furloughed. You know, so there's all these, they're just, again, lots of contradictions at play.
Yeah.
And it's my hope that we can, again, continue to activate, so that whatever energies we put out are going to the root system of what needs to happen. Um, because there's a point that we'll get to where this is, you know, like, you know, it's too far gone. It'll be too hard to redeem.
Yeah.
And that point has probably already come, in all honesty. And so this is why I'm, you know, I try to be as focused as I can and improve my focus around, you know, what's really in the root system of my curiosity of what's going on, what I'm observing, and especially, you know, what I'm feeling. Am I actually like feeling that thing, or am I making up a story about what I'm feeling? You know?
Mm.
So
What
yeah.
have you come up with? What is the answer? Do you have the answer to that yet?
That last one about
Yeah.
what I'm feeling, I knew you would ask me
Yeah.
that. You're right. You're right. Um, I've been working more to put down what for me has felt like an addiction to like a story. I have these lovely, lovely, lovely friends who will gently tell me, you know, everything you said was really beautiful, but I don't really know what you're really feeling. And I'm like, wait a minute, I just said X, Y, Z. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been working a lot more to get to like the true feeling state, and letting that and allowing that to just be, um, and not wrestling a feeling and like gorging myself on it.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, you know, I think about the people who are, you know, so angry all the time that when you see them coming, you'll run into traffic to avoid them, you know, or the
Yeah,
person
nobody
who, you
want to be that person,
know,
right?
right, right,
And
you
we
know,
all have them. We all know those people.
we all know those
Yes,
people,
we do.
you know, so kind of the addiction to some of the like stories around, you know, feeling a certain way, the people who complain, um, all the time. You know, complaint is normal, but all the time, not so much, you know. So I try to work on expanding, but without contorting.
Mm.
And that's one of the ones that I have, you know, just kind of written in the house. It's like expansion is good. When I start contorting into emotions and, you know, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm constantly rehashing, then I've got some, you know, I got some inner work to get at.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, yeah, every day work, and I'm glad to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we all could see it like that.
Mm,
Some inner work that we need to do within ourselves to
mm-hmm,
help us cope with the madness that's going on. You know, because again, like you said, it could take a while for policy and reform to come so that people see us as human. But then we got to make sure that we see ourselves as that, and that we begin to treat ourselves in spaces where we can love each other and allow people to us to make mistakes, but also, you know, have space for correction. Um, and those kind of love and relationships are so important. Um, to me, as a black man, I know I have
mm-hmm,
friends that are just like, hey, you know, some of them are I mean, like my age mates, as we say, and some
mm-hmm,
of them are kind of like my mentors. And so it's good to have people in your life that can help you along this journey. And then you say, look, I need to get A, B, and C together, you know,
mm-hmm,
you know. And then I think about your gardening. I just think, man, just what if when this popped off, we already had gardening and our own ecosystem in place. So
mm-hmm,
when the jewel got burned down, we already knew we got 5 community gardens we could shop at,
mm-hmm,
or that we shop at any other way,
mm-hmm,
you know. And so we didn't necessarily need a outside entity to provide us food, but it's there. But we have some inner infrastructure that really sustains us, whether that be gardening, mental health, um, even policing. If we had our own policing system, both individually, which I think we can't control, but maybe even collective, you know, um, kind of like the Panthers used to be initially when they started. They would supposedly, make sure that the neighborhood was this, that, and the other. And I read a book by Pearl Clegg, I think, how
Mm-hmm.
you say her last name. And I think there's a series of her books. And there's a guy in there, his name is Blue, and he's this big, black, big, bad Negro. And people fear him, but also respect him. And so they work in this particular area in Atlanta. This is, of course, fictional. And he's the law, him and a couple other people. And if you do something against their own internal rules, you're gonna have to deal with him or you gotta go, or both. And sometimes his judgment is you gotta leave this community.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not necessarily saying we need one person to be the judge, the juror, and the executioner of our communities, but like you're saying, figuring out other ways in which we can deal with some of these systems. And the whole thing of defunding the police, I think if people don't take that term literally, um, I think that can open up the door for us to look at different ways in which we could um, manage our community. Let healthcare professionals deal with issues that seem to deal with mental health, and so on and so forth. And of course, I don't have the answers to these things, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, those are just some of the thoughts that I hope can come from these conversations, from these movements, from this activation, from this energy, from us, collectively agreeing to move forward in a way that's productive for us all. So,
And you know, this, and you said defund the police, which I've been listening to a whole lot, and I keep going back to kind of the idea of like the municipality and the law, which
mhm,
I know there's a whole group of people who that's where their commitment is.
mhm,
And again, it's a real good example of me, understanding, not necessarily fully agreeing, because when I think about what you just said, and I'll come back to defund the police, when you said, the legislation that could take a while for them to see us as human. Um, and for me, uh, I can't control how they see. I
mhm,
can't control the kind of the script that they might be committed to, whoever they is. Um, that really is their script. I think about all the laws that have been in place
mhm,
that are supposed to stop some of these same behaviors. And those laws have been in place. Some of them have been in place for 20, 30, 40, 80, 100,
mhm,
200 years. And so we have examples where laws and legislation have been put in place, and there have been
mhm,
not only no change, but there has probably actually been regression. So for me, that's why,
mhm,
I can support my folks who are moving in that lane. Cool. But I'm also looking at the track record, and I'm looking at the history around legislation. And then I keep going back to, legislating morality, legislating like what
yes,
is the spirit and soul's
mhm,
right thing.
can be
Um,
done.
and so that brings me back to, kind of defunding the police. And, I thought about this because, defunding the police, I can definitely, again, understand why a lot of people are here. We're calling for this. And I think 3 days ago, Chicago Public Schools,
Mhm,
led by a Black mayor, decided to keep police in schools. That's a very powerful message right there.
it is.
Um, and so there's a way that the police, uh, some of them, um, many of them, I don't know, have a responsibility for, operating in a tyrannical way. There's also a lot of police who don't. And there is a way that the police are becoming like the representative for something that is much bigger and much more insidious and intricate. And for me, I'm much more committed to shifting, not bypassing what the police is doing, but understanding that they are being marketed as a face of something far more dangerous, far more poisonous. And I'm actually interested in, going to the root and leaching that. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna be the one to leach the poison, but get us to know that the police is one part of this, but don't get stuck there, because in some ways the police are being used as well. They're being used to kind of be yeah. I'll stop there.
No, that's powerful. That's powerful. That is very powerful.
And it's interesting. The way that I see that, Sonny, is because as a teacher, I look at the ways where teachers are also, used and blamed for things that have nothing to do with, teaching. And so you can hear this all the time when people talk about, those teachers, they just don't. And not realizing there's a whole bunch of other things going on and the teachers are being pushed out. So again, I want to be clear. I'm not absolving or excusing, police behavior or police brutality, but there's more at play. And I just feel like we are at a point where it's time to get more sophisticated with how we are looking and thinking and talking about these issues. And not sophisticated as in more complex, but sophisticated as in let's get into the root systems. We're going to require some very sophisticated activations. That's just my word. And relationship building, because this is a real sophisticated issue. It's long and deep. So yeah,
it is, and it can almost make a person, like you say, just throw their hands up and be like, this is too complex and too long and too deep.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't know if we can get beyond this,
But our beyond is us. Like the policing is actually our individual, interpersonal, communal, like policing of our, spirit and soul selves together. So, which is, different, but not.
That's true. It is different. It is different. Yeah, you just hit me with a boom. Me and my friend always talk about these systems. Because clearly, there's something wrong with the police system, the structure, the institution that gives somebody the freedom to do the heinous act they've been doing and don't feel like they don't have any trouble. So that speaks more. It speaks more to the institution than it actually does to the individual, because the individual feel like we can get away with this. Well, why would you think you can get away with that? Well, I think the reason they think they can get away with it is because the institution itself allows for this type of behavior. For you to use your own video camera to record yourself doing wrong and then turn that video camera in and know you're not going to have any type of pushback. Or, so yeah.
And Sonny, maybe, there is nothing wrong with the system. The only reason I'm going to say this now is because I posted it a week ago that, quite frankly, the system might actually be working exactly the way it's designed. And so that's a difficult message for some people to hear. But again, I remember the moment when I shifted. It was a long time ago. Because I remember when I had the script of like, this system is broken and flawed. And there was a lot of evidence to point to that. And I remember exactly what happened that allowed me to shift and say, oh, if I'm watching the history, the psychology, the commerce, this is actually working exactly as it was kind of designed to do. And I just remember having a lot more, accessing a lot more freedom around how I was feeling and thinking when I made that recognition. Yeah.
And maybe it's for our own sanity that someone would believe that you know, because I agree with you, because, you know, if you got something broke that long, you want it, then either it's not really broke or you want it to be this way, which is the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. So maybe this system ain't broke. Maybe this is the way it's designed. Because if you constantly keep saying, well, this ain't working, and nobody is doing anything with power to fix it. So, or the small little changes that are
Mm-hmm.
done through legislation and laws, there's loopholes in them, or nobody's paying attention to them. It's only so much time you can say,
Mm-hmm.
fix the system, and yeah, it may not necessarily be broke.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if it's not broke, then how do a person like you and I swallow that? Because I think that's one of the things that we want to see the humanity in people, specifically people who are charged with protecting and serving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. We want that guy to be the rogue cop, not that's not supposed to be normal. And for our own sanity, it's almost like, well, he got to be crazy to do that, as opposed to, yeah, that's how they get on. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And if the system itself is designed to produce this type of outcomes and unleash this amount of hate on people of color, yeah, I think that's a tough pill to swallow. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's harder for people to accept. People would rather see good in people than to say that some stuff just bad. And
And
it's
there's plenty of good.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
this is the thing, it's all walking side by side. And so, if I'm hearing your question when you said, what if in fact systems are designed for this? And what's wild is, like, remember, these systems are, like, based on artificial beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
artificial beliefs that this person is better or this group is better.
Yeah.
And what do we do? It's, in some ways, it's what you and I are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what we have always known so many people to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't like glittery or fancy. And it's also these challenges. So even, I think about 30 minutes ago, when you said something about, when you, in your prayers, where you're like, Lord, why us? Why us?
Mm-hmm.
Why us?
My
And it's interesting,
lament.
you know,
Yeah.
lament and woe,
Yeah.
all of which is real. And then for
Mm-hmm.
me, in some ways, there actually are, I believe, there are answers to those, so that they're not just, questions being asked. There are answers. But I've actually asked a whole different set of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, while I can see the ways that like these bodies, these melanated bodies are targeted, like
Mm-hmm.
when I say melanated, I look at, how quickly, like, some people from the Middle East, they ended up being churned and they ended up being targets. I've watched, we're not even talking about the, like, quote unquote detention camps at the border anymore, like straight up, like,
Mm-hmm.
capture
That's often, yeah.
of a whole other set of people. Or I shouldn't say that. I know there are people who are talking about that anymore,
But I
who
feel what
are
you're
still
saying.
talking about that.
Yeah.
But, there's a way that, my question is, like, well, not just why us, but what is happening to the people who are doing this? Why them? Why did they choose to, lock into this? I said it earlier, this kind of like inherited lovelessness, this systemic lovelessness. And that right there doesn't have anything to do with us,
That's right.
so, for me, I'm asking that question as well, like that systemic lovelessness, that inherited lovelessness, that inherited, like, decay of the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that to me is a very important question. That's not necessarily mine. I don't even really wrestle with it too much, but I don't just, I see us being, on the receiving end, And
Mm.
I also see us as transcendent,
Mm.
and very, very capable.
Mm.
Very, very capable. So,
Well, history has shown us, I think, that this is not new, but clearly we have survived it, right? To the point where we are, mm, maybe survive is not the word,
mm,
but I believe that there are some answers there. There are some answers that we
yeah.
might need to look back and say, how did our ancestors um, cope with this? Maybe they didn't overcome it, but how did they cope with this? And you know, maybe it's in those conversations, research, those prayers
Mm-hmm,
that we can find some of those answers. That coping
mm-hmm.
is attainable.
Yeah,
Um,
and fully design. There are things that we are right
what
now.
did you
We've
say?
always been innovative. I said full redesign,
Full
so
reason? Yes,
that
yes.
yes, so that it's not. It's coping is one part of it, but their whole kind of constructs that we are redesigning,
Yes.
and robustly, and yes to pitching our energy upward to that. Um, and so yes, there's a lot more I can say. I'll just pause.
Mm. Okay. Woo.
Right? All right, here we go. You know what I'm about to do.
Okay.
Can we take a deep breath again
Let's do it. Let's
together?
do it.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that, friend.
Yes. Yes.
Very
Yes.
appreciative. And there's
Well, let's.
more, you know?
Yeah. Um. You want to say something in closing? We've been on almost hour and a half. We're doing it up, right? Hour and 20 minutes about, right?
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Trust the people, you know. Move at the speed of trust and trust the people. Um, we are it's going to take a completely new layer of discipline and commitment. Um, you know, it's a clarion call. It's a very intense moment because, again, we're looking for
Mm.
whole different ways, and we have access to that. I trust us. I
Mm.
trust that we can do it. What you gonna say in closing, Sonny?
First of all, I'm gonna say I'm gonna trust with you. I'm gonna trust with you. You know, I've never
True
felt
talk.
hopeless. I never felt hopeless because I just always
Right.
felt like I don't know. I don't know why. Well, my spirituality is rooted in the fact that I believe God is sovereign and He
Mm.
can protect us and He can work through us and even beyond us to do miraculous things that are beyond our imagination,
Mm-hmm.
even through us, and they can shock even us. I cannot believe that, right? Um, and I don't think I always had an answer to those, which is why part of my time during this COVID has been to realign myself and make sure that
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing clearly and I got information. Um, I got good
Yeah.
information, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great point about discernment, because we're being flooded. We're at a time where we have access to more information than we've ever had in the history of the world,
Right.
and our knowledge making skills are decreasing. So there's so much information management, we don't really know how to make knowledge around it. So I appreciated you saying that about just being discerning and figuring out what is and what's not. You know, we know the Russians are probably up to all kinds of new news making.
Yeah.
Um, and you know what, Clarence? I can't forget this part. Build your immunity. You know, build our immunity. this is summertime, you know, like some of us who are melanated folks activate that, gear up on immunity, and not just physical, but our spiritual immunity. We're about to go back into what's historically known as like the cold season in the fall. So
Mm-hmm.
let's keep doing that too.
Yeah, yeah. We're about to go back into what is Chicago's summertime, which can historically be very
Yeah, yeah,
chaotic, violent,
yeah.
chaotic in the city. So
Right.
yeah, you need to build your immune system up for that so that you won't get lost in that shuffle on either end. All right.
Thanks, friend. Thank you so much. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me.
I
Thank you for
told
holding the
y'all, I
vision for
told
this.
y'all. I'm going the wrong way. This camera got me going the wrong way.
Wherever you are, I'm there. I
That's
am
what's
there.
up. That's what's up. I'm going to stop this now.